today, but it's also, we're at the end, so thank you for still hanging in there and coming to one more session. Have this very important discussion. We wanted to start by making sure we all know who's in the room. So first, I'm going to introduce myself, just very basic. I'm Kenesha Austin. I'm the Assistant Dean for Experiential Learning at Georgetown Law School.
And I'm Beth Schwartz. I'm the faculty director of the I only make a face because I have a couple of titles. I'm the faculty director of the Externship program at Fordham. And your program indicates actually that I teach at Fordham and I also run the Externship program at Fordham. So if you notice the typo,
it's not true.
And so before we dive in, we wanted to first make sure everyone in the room knows who we all are, and if you could tell us what group you're in as you go, like if people move the signs a little bit, but there's a reason why we did that, and we'll get to that when we move further into the session. So would you like to start us off? Just your name, so the name, school, number of years.
I'm Tony Forsyth. I'm not with the school. I'm the CEO of PointLink, and we're a software development company that does, we're designing an externship management software application.
Ellie Lanier, I'm here at UGA, and a number of years in the current role, maybe 2. We've been moving people into long-term contracts slowly.
I'm Cecily Beggs. I just started at Boston University School of Law this year, and we had a 2-year full-time faculty contract.
June Tai, Iowa. I've been here for 1.5 years.
I'm Cecily Becker.
Oh my God.
I know. Anyway, for us, Cecily, that's not very common. So I'm at Texas A&M, University School of Law, and I've been in that role for over 10 years, but I also was part of career services too for a long time of that. Yeah, is that all the same right now? Okay.
I'm Amanda Vivas, and I have been in this role at St. Mary's University School of Law for 7 years.
Lauren Donald. I'm at the University of Tulsa College of Law, and I have been in my role for 2.5 years.
Stephanie Nye. I'm at the University of South Carolina School of Law, and I've been in my role for 2 years.
I'm Adrienne Smith from Boston University, and I've been at this 9 years. I'm Rachel Mayover from the University of Pennsylvania Law School. I've been there for 9 years, working on externships kind of throughout that time, but mainly in the clinical program.
I'm Bill Powers. I'm with the University of Houston, and I've been in this role for 1 year.
Marsha Levy, Columbia Law School, 5 months.
I'm Gloria McLaughlin. I'm at the University of Alabama Law School. I've been at the law school for almost 6 years as the public interest and pro bono director, but I just also took on the role of externship director about 3 months ago.
Alexis Carboni. I'm with Core Higher Education Group. We are an experiential education software partner, and I've been with Core for 10 years now.
Danny Shafson with the University of Memphis School of Law, and I'm in my 9th year there, but visited for the first 2 years, and I've been the director of experiential learning clinics for 7 years.
Hi, I'm Mark Weinstein. I'm at California Western School of Law. I've been there for 25 years. I've been the director 3 years.
I'm Karen Jordan from the University of Louisville School of Law. I've been there about over 20 years also, but only have been working with externships for maybe 7 or 8 years.
I'm Lauren Bartlett. I'm with Ohio Northern University. It's my 3rd year there, my 3rd year directing the clinic and externship program.
Hi, I'm Denise Roy from Mitchell-Hamlin School of Law, and I've been there 25 years, 2 years as externship director.
That's great, thank you, and again, welcome. As the title of the session says, one size does not fit all. There's no, we're not here to be experts on what the externship director role is. In fact, we think that's the discussion we should all have and hear from each other and how we approach the work and what it looks like at our respective schools. So our hope is this to be a very interactive session where we're actually talking to each other more and sharing across ideas, sharing our thoughts on the main central questions. So quickly, just to run through the agenda of what we hope to accomplish today, and then we can dive in. So we want to make sure we first talk about the goals, what the goals Beth and I have identified, and then also if other people we want to have an opportunity to hear if you had thoughts about things you were hoping to get out of this. We want to best we can make sure we get those in. Our session overview, break into some small group work, and then come back together and do a debrief and takeaways.
So again, we're hoping that through those small group discussions, we're going to identify some essential characteristics that we all agree are part of all of our roles, regardless of what our status is or how our program operates or whether we have other responsibilities, and I know a lot of us do. Also identifying the differences. And there are a lot of differences. And I was amazed at the new clinician session yesterday early in the morning when people identified themselves, how many different roles were identified. It just seems like the roles keep growing and certainly not shrinking. We're also going to share some ideas, hopefully in small groups, about how we meet the challenges that many of us face, because some of us do wear more than one hat at our law schools, and even if we only wear one hat, I'm sure many of us have challenges. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish. Bill Adams did a really good job of covering a lot of what we had planned to cover. So I don't think we're going to need to spend quite as much time on the ABA standards as we had planned, but we do want to go over them just to ground all of us in what the ABA says are the requirements for field placement and how that implicates what we do, what kind of impact that has.
So, you know 303A, 3, and B1, we, of course, just focus on the pieces that were field placement specific, of which externships is defined as a type of. But as we know, it says, we now have this 6-credit requirement, and again, field placement being one type of requirement, assuming 304C is met, that can meet that. And the things that they, in 303 really highlights to focus on is the integration of doctrine, theory, skills, and legal ethics. The fact that are we developing the underlying concepts that speak to the professional skills being taught, and are we providing multiple opportunities for performance and self-evaluation for our students. That's the meat, like the substance of 303A that I think we all pay attention to now and really think about in terms of how we design and are running our externship programs.
And of course, we know that, we know from the small print that the definition of field placement course contains many more requirements than the definition of law clinic or simulation course, which I find incredibly interesting. And basically, a lot of this existed before. It was just moved from 305E into 304C. It will probably have a different number when 303 and 304 merge. But these are the requirements. That substantial lawyering experiences are provided to our students in the field. And under the supervision of a licensed attorney or individual otherwise qualified, I'm very troubled to hear Bill Adams say, I don't know what that means. But he did say that. So now I feel better that I actually say, no, it has to be a licensed attorney. And direct supervision by a faculty member or site supervisor, not and. Opportunities for performance feedback from either faculty member or site supervisor, and opportunities for self-evaluation. We all know about the written understanding among student, faculty member, and person in authority at the field placement. And I don't know that we need to talk any more about the written understanding. We heard a lot about that today at lunch. Method for selecting, training, evaluating, and communicating with site supervisors, including regular contact between the faculty and site supervisors through in-person visits. And I'd be curious to hear from those maybe who don't how they satisfy that requirement, that the contact be between the faculty and site supervisors. Classroom component or regularly scheduled tutorials or other means of ongoing contemporaneous faculty-guided reflection. Evaluation of the student's achievement by a faculty member. Interesting, since we're not typically in the field for those students. Sufficient control over the experience to ensure that the requirements listed are met, and maintaining records, which I think we convinced Bill Adams don't have to be hard copy, right?
Yeah, maybe.
And we were going to talk a little bit and kind of went quickly to get to the standards, but we were going to talk a little bit about our roles in our respective schools and the hats we wear, and a little bit more about our position and what's expected of us.
Yes, which the next couple of slides lead directly to again. So this idea of one size does not fit all. We all know we play and we do many different roles and do many different things under that umbrella of being an externship director at our schools. And so that's the discussion we want to have and get to. And this slide right here from the most recent CSEL report, which I believe 97%, I think it was like a return, extraordinarily wonderful, high successful return rate of, that really shows where we are seeing our community in terms of where they sit at their respective institutions, which is why one of the reasons why we had you physically sit in those areas for this conversation. In terms of where I sit at my school at Georgetown Law, so this year I was promoted to the Assistant Dean of Experiential Education, which now my portfolio includes externships, JD externships, simulations, and practicum courses, so another type of field placement course, right? Before that, I was hired as the JD externship director, so that's what I did when I first came aboard at Georgetown. We have a very large externship program, as many people know. Mark and I talked about that in his session. We serve over 400 students a year in the externship program. A little over, like this semester, we have 230 students doing externships at a variety of judicial, governmental, and 501c3 nonprofit organizations. And someone's responsible for managing all of that, and for a long time that was just me. Right now, it's still just me. We're hiring a new director. We've also brought in the director's role to also be cross-cutting across the non-clinical experiential courses that I oversee. But that's where, but in terms of those signs, I don't know where the admin sign fell, but I would be in your row. So that's how it's been structured at Georgetown, and that's my portfolio. Entered the field in the world almost 10 years ago with this person as my boss. I was a clinical teaching fellow at Fordham when I left practice, and had the opportunity there as a faculty member, so even fellows at that time, I don't know if it's still the case, are faculty in the externship role at Fordham.
And we no longer have teaching fellows at Fordham. It was one of the things at university, yeah, well, 2008, 2009 brought a lot of changes. So I've been at Fordham for over 30 years, and for the first 20 years I taught in-house clinics, a number of different in-house clinics. I've had faculty status from the start, contract, long-term contract. I would be sitting in this first row. And about almost 10 years ago, I became director of the externship program, which at Fordham is not full-time responsibility. So the other programs that I run are our fundamental lawyering skills program, which is a course that's taught in small groups. It's a simulation course. It's experiential. And almost all of the students at Fordham take it. It's a prerequisite or co-requisite for all of our in-house clinics. And it is now, those of you familiar with the New York skills requirement, it's required for Pathway 1 of the New York skills requirement. So there are going to be at least 200 students taking it in the coming year. I also am the director of a much smaller program, the Pro Bono Scholars Program, which is full-time field placement at most schools. At Fordham, until this year, all of the students were placed in our in-house clinics. And so for anybody who doesn't know what the Pro Bono Scholars Program is, they take the BARDs in February of their last semester, followed by 12 weeks of full-time pro bono work. Many of the pro bono scholars work at organizations outside their law school and perhaps outside the location of their law school. A lot come to New York, actually, to New York City, to do their pro bono work. This semester, we're allowing one student to work at an organization outside of the law school. See, we do things really slowly for them. We would try it with one, and 9 others are in our in-house clinics this semester. So I wear a few different hats. I would say that being director of the externship program was less than 50% of, I devoted less than 50% of my time to that, except that the externship administrator that had been at Fordham for 6 years left in January, and we can't fill her position for 4 months. So I now am devoting at least 50% of my time to the externship program. So I'm doing the administrative work in addition to being a faculty.
And then one other note I should have mentioned, that's a key difference between where Beth and I sit in our respective schools. So whereas Beth is a faculty member, the way Georgetown, and this actually came up at lunch, right? So can an adjunct faculty member serve the requirement of the agreement must be between, the field supervisor, faculty, and the student, all those places in 304 CPC faculty, can that be an adjunct? We have determined, in our interpretation and reading of the rule, thank goodness, is in line with what Bill said at lunch, which is we do it as an adjunct. So that's my other title. I'm an adjunct faculty member at Georgetown. The new director we hire will also, by virtue of that title, carry the adjunct faculty. So it's kind of good, but I think that's a discussion, right? That's part of this discussion. Like, what does that mean? I think these numbers tell us that a good percentage of our community have gone in the direction of security, giving status that is more secure, or at least providing that opportunity between the tenured and the longer term contract folks. I mean, that's the majority up there. So that's the big picture view. So the next slide, and yes.
Are you taking questions in between?
Sure.
Please
stop.
Okay, so my position is I'm an administrator without faculty title. We thought I had a faculty title, but we've just learned that I do not. Okay? So you can ask me after how that came about. But in any event, my externships, though, are really field clinics. Every externship has like 6 or more students. I just use the example of Bronx Defenders. We send 9 students there, and a Bronx Defender teaches the seminar. We give her adjunct faculty status. And so my view, and I'm just curious to see whether others agree, is that when I do the MOU, she's the faculty member, because I'm not the faculty member, I don't have faculty status. And then there's the site supervisor signs and the student, and I sign as the director of externships. Does that sound okay?
Who grades them? Who grades? Who's the ultimate grade?
Who gives the grade? Her.
The adjunct. So the adjunct meets all those requirements in 304C. For each one of those externships that you have, so many of them.
Yes. So please, let's keep asking questions, and we will save time at the end. And we want you to also ask these questions in your small group so we can surface them for the larger group discussion when we get to that question. We really chunked a good amount of time for that. But yes.
Well, mine is and I know y'all didn't do the CSAIL survey, but we have a sort of a clinical track that puts you into a long-term contract, and you can go from, assistant to associate clinical professor, but it's not listed up there as an option, so I didn't know.
Well, it's not a long-term contract?
Well, it's a long-term contract, but, you're a clinical faculty, a clinical professor, so you kind of move through.
I think that's what those categories are, when you're 2 and 3 year 5+.
Oh, okay,
I
because I was
can't
an
make
instructor with
definitions, yeah,
the one-year
I'm not sure.
contract for a long time before we set up the clinical unit. We had to, and we kind of modeled it after pharmacy and some of the other places that have clinicians.
I
And
think it looks less at title and more at contract status and
thank you.
security of position is how I think they do it.
I think that's
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So this next slide that I think, for me, I was really excited, that was my part of the presentation was identifying in the CSO report what we wanted to talk about, share out and summarize for folks. And so this particular data point I thought was interesting and went directly to the theme of this conversation, which 50% of respondents to the field placement course sub-survey. So for all of us who did this and got constant emails about it, you remember there was different parts. And based on how you answered one part, you might have received a subsequent sub-survey. And so for the field placement course sub-survey, 50% of those respondents identify as head of their main field placement program. But then they also ask the questions about, then what are your responsibilities in that role? And I thought the numbers weren't surprising, but again, they directly implicate this conversation. That the role, depending on your, the resources, mission, scope, and scale of your institution, can really vary to what you do day to day. And so this is why we shared this data. Back to you,
What I shared with the externship administrator when I had one. But it took years to get to the point where she was fairly independent on making some of these judgments. And I guess I still would have said that I have the responsibility. Even though I had an administrator I could delegate to, I still would have identified myself as having responsibility for at least the first two and the last. Application process and student advising, I really did turn over to the administrator. And it takes a lot of time to counsel students. And I forgot. I forgot how many emails they sent. And I forgot that they don't read information on the web pages carefully, or they can't find it on the web pages. And yeah, so some basic questions, but advising students, I think, takes a tremendous amount of time. So no, it doesn't surprise me. No. Oh. Does any of this surprise any of you?
reactions, thoughts?
Sorry.
Well, I'm just curious how much of the last category, I can imagine there's a huge range.
The reflection and teaching piece?
Right, that you could teach, a small percentage of a program that's otherwise taught by others.
Right.
Or, so you're not the sole teacher.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Right.
Just curious about that.
And that wouldn't be reflected.
Yeah, so this is just any amount of.
So I teach one seminar, there may be 8 others, they're taught by adjuncts. I don't read the reflections of students in those seminars.
So Denise, that was the one subcategory that stuck out to me the most too. Because again, I do all, in my role as director, I did all of those things. I was definitely in the high 90s, those folks in the high 90%. I did write the curriculum that we teach in our reflection and teaching, but we actually hire adjuncts to do all of that.
Yeah.
So yes, but if it's the case that you're doing all these things and you have a significant responsibility of the reflection and teaching piece, that's significant, right? That's a big job. So we want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Which is what takes us to the next
So these were some of the questions that we thought you might talk about in small groups, but our main goal is to for all the groups to identify ultimately what we believe are the key aspects of the role, regardless of our statuses or how many other hats we wear. We created these groups based on basically the CSIL data, thinking we would have a certain number of adjunct faculty here because it said that 19% of those who are externship directors are adjunct faculty, and there are none. And tenure track, clinical tenure track was at least 20%. But putting it all together, tenure track, clinical, tenure, and clinical. None of you are clinical candidates, correct? So that's something I don't hear about all that often anymore. And we thought there would be more contract clinicians. There are actually 3, and myself. And we had separated short-term contracts from long-term contract, but now we put them together because there aren't that many. And administrators with and without faculty status is this largest group here. And it is a group that's growing for sure, and you're in that group.
Yeah, I'm sorry, is that the second row there?
Second and third.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I think it would be great if you, yeah,
You're all grouped together.
If
You want 2 groups?
if you broke into 2 groups, because you're not small. You're not a small group.
Like 5 to 4?
Yeah.
That would work.
Half
Time
is
markers. But we want you to join in the discussion. We thought about assigning groups to questions, but this is still too journalistic. I think we can get to all of
So you can decide which of these questions you want to do.
Alright, take your notes, Wes.
So pick the questions you want to talk about first. If you can get to all of them, it'd be great.
All right, I'm going to you guys.
I have let me know if you need more.
And we're going to
30 minutes. 25?
I got one.
25 minutes.
Very tall. Big takeaways that you give for those questions. First, like to share out things I'm thinking of people to have their own aha moments or the bigger issues that we're going to discuss in response to kind of those framing questions.
Okay, so how many things outside? That's my that's one of my interests. My other issue is
That's the So one person would be the reporter for each because we don't want you to report back when we finish up the school discussion. So you can identify a reporter. Somebody else can report it as long as somebody reports. And that's fine. You just want to know how much
And the engineer and I work sometimes in the exact same building.
And when I first
Don't turn around.
Same thing, they run the bachelor's program clinics, and you have 3 full-time staff, but, and then, the externship is looking at all the I don't have a stipend system, and it's been a long time. But it's like our program has been so, and I think we don't have practicals, but, I mean, true kind of experts, but I think what I started at was maybe like 5 classes, and usually, like, you have to get into expert and we all have it.
Well, I guess my official job is director of internships and externship programs, because that tries to be and I have adjunct status. Since ours is all, we just moved to ours from the Supreme Court, which is where I'm stepping into this role. And I still wear a lot of those hats.
yes, support.
Inherited some of those as well because
Well, I lost intern, part-time.
Fellowship program.
So what, has there anything that's been cross-cutting already? I was doing 2015.
It's been about
What drew you to this? It started basics, right? So there's
I knew I wanted to go to this next year.
Yes. And I won't have an administrator, so I won't be set up.
Somehow we have to now have a staff. We're already now, eligibility status, we're starting forward, so we need this. I don't know. I didn't know. Other people felt
And I just said, email me and say,
and when I found
all applications,
yeah,
they wanted to do seminars in one place, and it
just
doesn't
me
be
kind of South Carolina.
And I don't know how to.
A line there.
I can't do that, I have to somebody else.
So for me, yes, like, can you decide whether
But I can ask when.
Yeah.
Bernard actually has got 20 minutes. Faculty, it's called one thing, or non-faculty. It's called some other Latin name, that actually was kind of struck because I remember when I was able to have an
Yeah, so that's also very interesting. I'm allowed to do service. So my school is trying to figure that out. And the fact that part of the board is, and
I wouldn't say it's the hardest, but what I'm finding is
the only people that have been challenging, we also so it
and others try to streamline the process. Maybe they've been way over and standard answers that I can just copy and paste into the email. A lot of it is and if I could just say,
I'm going to drill down on that a little bit more, but I want to get everybody's thoughts. So William, David,
laid out.
There's just,
Like we run off the house. Then it's, after you tell,
There was not.
there's still, read all of it, there's still more questions. Should be 5 years. So
I'm sorry, I was just moving papers up when you started your season. There's identified where you are in Houston, but it is your title.
yeah, so that feels very sound. What's happening?
Brain is
Like I did, it's been research skills.
so you're calling sound a good page. Some of them, there seems to be more what are some of the like tensions or questions like sometimes? What are the issues? So I'm trying to make the decision. Is there a hesitancy?
But I will have to,
That's, yeah. And their perception is like, other full-time
So
person?
that's what I'm right.
Yeah, was there really that much workaround in the meeting?
Somewhere along.
They hear that and be responsive to it and be willing to put it
I don't know that I will.
It was, okay. I mean, we don't have any complaints, we didn't see your line, but
It all goes in our
like,
system.
That's how I play cheese.
Your family
I'm not letting this law school control out of but it does, like, but it just who is.
It's a lot of responsibility, right? I feel like service, do all of those things.
Well,
Yeah,
all the students are reading all the journals and all of that, and also has to talk to constantly.
Yeah, that's the other thing we should have taken it's like the dean could say, hey, I don't want to pleasure. You know, let's forget that. That's going to take a lot of, you know. What would be helpful for this?
So what other responsibilities?
We asked in the community, what's feedback, to the extent that you want to advocate. I don't want to ask you to weigh in. I just want to make sure you have information you're taking back with you and broaden the discussion. So what are the issues, I guess, like what would be some of the feedback that you can give that might help you share your needs and the folks that you on this question?
For a little while, I'm back.
Oh, yeah, no, I drove the phone.
They had, because every said, everybody's gonna have to play the
Full well, have you ever had a chance to see this? I have a link to go. So a lot of that's
and then about the other
yeah, but like I didn't know I was in the camp. Let's do it. So I just talked about some part of the Holy Spirit. So full look.
we'll get out to what.
That's what I was
So I got to think about it.
this year, you know, like I don't go back.
Well, and that's
Once that happened, I'm like, really?
You know, but on the other hand, there's increased credibility. Per semester, two courses, and next year. Yeah, receptions. Yeah.
It's because everybody to do it.
And they might not know.
For somebody on the just to do it.
What's on your
So,
I know. That's what I got to do.
They can actually vote on policy changes.
Yeah, but no,
And so it would be kind of clear people to whether they're in or not, that's what they would vote on. Special school scenario right now, what are others doing? We're not,
people are not.
all the
We haven't hired.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's fine. That can watch a whole day.
Yeah.
It's like, no, what is
this? How long you can do one email on like a certain. Yeah. But I'm like, I'm really good.
It's where my
It's really good at it.
Does anybody think the externship director should be?
And I teach one of them as part of her adjunct role as an administrator. We have admin support and that's very, very helpful. But it's nice. Okay, so
and then literally you are the
Yes, and now
you have a board program or whatever. Now you
so we need to clear for our time. And so I mean, now I feel a lot of that are tech. So now I'm like the IT tech desk person for the software.
So this is a good question. So, you know, if you had, I know, let's say you're sitting on the director, so everything dedicated to that. We can always do it on the characteristics of the programs you're doing. Like you could take the pieces off your plate that maybe strictly with an admin. What would be good to go to what you designated? I know resources of but it can give us things to talk about feedback and what's the high value pieces that we fight for if necessary, to advocate for. So can we just entertain that for a second? Let's hire someone. We have a program, which is used all the time. But program coordinator for like their whole experiential programs for the not for the piece, but it's for all across all the programs. So I do that. What do you have to have that thoughts on that?
I think it would be it would be focusing on the pedagogy and like classrooms. That's where, you know, because I teach and I guess my idea is listening to the classroom activities while I said it earlier. Like, okay, the ethics piece, how can I do that a little differently? How can I bring in something else that can be more engaging? I feel like my skill set is that and feeling positively and how they can't upload their time that day.
Being able to actually do it.
You have to be seen.
That's right, you're in the career office. So that's the cabin because I told her to go to the country, so don't tell me twice. I know this one is so because I know about so by the way,
And I love my spreadsheet too. Like my spreadsheet. Oh, it's color coded.
They're all voting, there's an eye, there's no
I don't mean to say that that would be.
And I'm afraid to say, hired
So the way that externships are organized.
I feel like I'm gonna get a
settle into structure.
If we go to
So are you two runs by
what we use
This is true.
I guess you're
I just want to get this going.
okay, and then because you have faculty that
right. So it's interesting following the same where it's being supervised.
yeah, and you get
And it's just
But I think it's like experience and
Yeah, that one.
with me and did a lot of things with like
And they don't have the time either.
So me sitting here.
I'll try to schedule their schedule. You know, you have all these different schedules, every like one on my head. I guess it's just, probably because I'm used to it.
No, but
But I think the reason that
we're trying, and it's been very creative. So I hear that, I just had this thing, or like I do, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that might be good.
Whether we want to or not.
I use them all sometimes I get hard to take it in my hands, I get
I was thinking, we just needed to read about it and said the rock readings are also really good. I think another bus presenter actually had a comment, foot traffic. I talked about professors have and Pleasant office, but we have really like a small, the only one with no windows, the classes aren't because it's very, we don't want to be modern building, whatever. So in the faculty area. 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
We will identify the key aspects of the role.
we added, we also added time to faculty supervisors and
Okay.
We've been moving use of the word.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I tried. It's less the second version.
And usually there's like, where do you get here?
See everyone.
Isolation is really sweet. Really sweet.
In some respects, I felt closer to them because they were right there.
And everyone's
Last time I did it,
That first question, post the 2016 ABA standards revision. Did anyone do anything different?
I have,
Well, then,
and then my position as an administrator, I think there was a need for, there wasn't prior to me, but she had special needs. As a result of that.
so you all agree that one of the aspects is
oh, okay, so we have 30, right now we have 30 minutes. Which is a mix of field work and project-based practices. So not everyone's in the field, but now, you know, the project-based, they count. What's the relationship? Yeah. Old school externship program, that's the one we're trying to 400 students in that. They're all working 10 to 15 hours a week. Yeah. And they're participating as a companion.
You know, teach the
So we use Canvas. So they download from our website, so all the review will be valid, and they have to get it signed by their supervisor. They have to sign it. It's like a 5-page document, even though it's like something more responsibility. It's actually once there's an assignment, the first assignment, then they have to upload it to Canvas. So they also need or some of the their text actually takes pictures of it. Yeah. Do you guys feel freedom in your roles to expand more? Like how much do you feel like you're encouraged and allowed to shake? Like I want to take it off. You don't have to answer that. How much of a out there taking that? A lot of it involves educational programs. Well, I guess in schools and I give them like as I still is it good?
I mean, I
talk
with
make decisions on what you with respect to your externship. You have to do time sheets. I feel like I've had a lot.
So it's okay that I want the roles, but there was some.
Definitely. What about you, Bill?
I feel like I do, but I haven't pushed too hard just yet because
I'll have to follow up. It's just
so this is like to make a lot of changes.
Yeah.
What now?
Okay. Are we ready? Let's start with the tenure track.
Lauren is our reporter.
All right. Lauren Sorola.
Okay, well, so we only got to a couple of questions. The biggest takeaway was that all of us have additional roles and responsibilities beyond directing the externship. Some of it's stuff trial teaching, some of it's clinical teaching, some of it's other types of administration, some of it's clinic externship design, but the externship role is part of what we do. And then I guess we talked about our relationships with faculty a little bit, and they all seem to be pretty good. I think might be defining part of our group being the tenure
impact group. What else did we talk about?
How overworked we are, I think was the basic, right? And
How our other tenured colleagues don't do half of what we wind up doing.
well, and just about where we're at and sort of the development of externships within the academy, within law schools. And a lot of us, all of us, are reflections of this sort of being a relatively new thing to have externship directors. We all got their different ways, and some, tagging on to a doctrinal role or adding doctrinal after externship, and so that, I think, contributes to the huge hodgepodge that we have and how the work gets done.
And would this group say that a best practice is that the externship director should be a faculty member? Did you talk about that?
Why? We didn't talk about that, but I think we would.
They all are.
Because we are.
Maybe you don't think that. Maybe you think this was foisted on you and somebody else could be doing it and they don't, doesn't have to be a faculty member.
But I think it also relates more maybe to the collective view. I don't want to speak out of turn, but that whoever is teaching and running the externship program and doing all that comes with that should be a fundamental part of all decisions made about that program, and should be a part of other decisions at the law school, in the faculty room, making those decisions as they affect broader curricular topics. And so I think in that way, we didn't even explicitly say it, but I think it underscores what we do believe, that it's a best practice that everybody here is doing it anyway.
Yeah.
That's what we all do. So.
And I think
So is it okay if I write that?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I would say we didn't express a sense of isolation because we were in the faculty discussions and so on. The resource stretch, I think, is still there. Not enough resources being put toward. But I think it's better just from the standpoint of being an integral, treat it as an integral part of the faculty.
So I want to tease this question out even a little bit more, because I joined up with my fellow admin folks over here, the admin team, and it goes directly to one of the things folks came here as part of their takeaway and wanted to discuss. So a few folks on our team are in this place, not precarious, but it's a little bit uncertain place where there's discussion at their schools about whether or not their current role, which isn't technically externship director, it's something more broad on the clinical admin side, should be broken into two different roles where there would be an externship director. And so one of the questions we were hoping, and it doesn't have to just be you, because we also want other people may have thoughts on this, and some of it you've already even started to go into, are the advantages of having faculty status. So sometimes you have that question of be careful what you ask for, like in terms of asking and potentially advocating for that. What are the advantages and what are the pitfalls of having that hat in addition to the externship hat? So folks want to give some feedback to that team, to us on that question. That would be helpful for people to take back to their schools.
Anything else from or other people's views? So let's start with this group of administrators. Okay,
So we talked about some of the questions up there and that big ABA change. Almost everyone got either a new title, some clarification on their title, or a new job, which comes with that. So that is almost everyone was impacted by that change in one way or another. Most everyone in our group also really dressed up externship. There was a little bit of pro bono public interest that also is shared. A lot of us did feel like we had a chance to shape our roles that we're in. We did, of course, have some differences in where we're located in clinic. Some of us were in faculty, some of us are still independent. But some of the challenges were this idea of, without that status or title, the academic freedom that comes with that. The the power dynamic and control over ultimate decisions that are happening with the things that we do every single day. And then that sort of awareness that we want to collaborate and work with others, right? And we sometimes think maybe we're going to collaborate ourselves out of a job. So this whole idea, right? We're going to collaborate ourselves out of a job in some ways. And we understand and we respect the academic and curricular parts of what we do. And we want this, we even brought up that whole thing that came up with the plenary of curriculum versus program and talking about that. But then we also, we want to spread the awareness, be the cheerleaders for what we do, because we think it's so great, and get our students involved. But then what if we're exposing potentially something that's going to be in love in our faces? And we don't have the power or the control to be able to stop that. And then that turns into some of the relationship issues of what we have access to and where we are sitting at the table. Some of us do get a chance and are maybe can only go to faculty meetings when something of our externship program is being discussed. I don't know how much of a role we have in actually saying anything there. But some of us are invited, are intimidated to go though, because they feel like faculty or faculty with a little lowercase f. And our biggest allies are often the law librarians. We feel like we're a little bit more equal to, I guess, and comfortable with. But that was a lot of our conversation.
It's a lot to unpack. Have your sign on and hang it up. Does anyone else want to do the summary from admin 2? Or you want me to do it?
This is your group.
I did a report on that for award, and then you guys can chime in with things on this. So, you know, we talked about feeling like an outsider within the school and not being, you know, involved in decisions like we've discussed already, not being included in faculty meetings or being invited, but, you know, not allowed to say anything. And I think we found it helpful that just coming here and feeling and knowing that we weren't alone in our schools was one of the really helpful things just from coming to the conference. We, as Kenisha mentioned, you know, a couple of us were talking about our current roles and the fact that we're in this situation now with our schools deciding, should we break out these roles and have it, you know, actually hire an externship director, put money towards this, this person's salary and benefits. And one of the things that was brought up was, again, faculty status, which I think we talked about a lot here, and then, you know, some of the advantages for it, you know, being included, feeling included in things, the ABA standards, and how that plays in there. We talked, mentioned that there's, you know, coming to the conference, we're realizing that there are so many different ways to design a program here, and that is a little bit overwhelming, you know. Some people have classroom components, some people have faculty tutorials. You know, there's just so many different ways of doing things, and it seems like they fly with the ABA rules. We said if, in an ideal world, we were allowed to hire a full-time admin person to help with externships, what would be the advantages to the law school to put out the money for that? And we said, well, we would have extra time to go out and do trainings for our faculty supervisors and our site supervisors that really, you know, are saying, are we the right people that do this? Do we have enough knowledge? Please give us more training, but finding the time is difficult. We talked about focusing on pedagogy, what we would change in our classroom components, what we would add, and maybe doing redesigns. Again, it takes time. And finding new placement sites, actually going out, being able to go out of the office and, you know, be gone for an hour or two and meet with new potential placements would be, we thought, a big benefit.
And like admin 1, this is in my head, so I didn't get a chance to write everything down we talked about because it was such a rich discussion, but a couple other just things I'll highlight from what I remembered. Lots of diversity amongst us in terms of where the role sits at our respective institutions. We had some folks where it sits in career services and like that for different reasons, particularly with respect to the placement title piece of it. On the question of whether the changes made a big difference, what changes, if any, did these revisions make? All of us said the MOU. I mean, that's the biggest change that we think everyone has seen as a result of the revisions. I think those were the other things we missed. And in terms of shaping the role, there was a lot of interesting discussion, because there are those of us who feel like we have great freedom. And I kind of feel like sometimes we have that freedom because people don't always exactly know what we do.
That's a huge thing.
How the sausage gets made, so you're making it, and so that is a big thing. And then others feel like it's very top-down, it's imposed from those who are the decision makers, the faculty status folks who are deciding what is and isn't happening in our externship program. And I think that's a big issue for us. So I hope I did us justice.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Contract.
I was just gonna say, you're at Penn, right?
Yes.
I started out at Penn as a clinician, in-house clinician. We were treated just like you in those days.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they've now created a dual stream, one for in-house clinicians and now one, and they're on a clinical tenure track, right?
Well, the practice professors are, but we also have clinical supervisors who are not.
Right.
Okay.
They're a 5-year contract.
We were 7 and out.
Well, I'll have to catch up with you.
Contract clinicians.
I'm not sure I can actually read it. I think. So the first questions were, I think, maybe along the lines of the question on what staff support could be available, or should we try and advocate for amount of time from the staff person, perhaps, or what they can be helpful to do, like what pieces of our roles might we be able to get help from a staff person to do. And then I think I was also interested in participation in faculty governance and information sharing, because I'm a non-voting faculty member, and I think I'm the only one in our faculty. So I was interested in hearing. I don't know that. I think my involvement is not that different from the administrative side. We talked about just generally how to talk about the value that we add to our programs, admissions, and making sure that that voice is heard as we develop the curriculum. And then we talked a little bit about short-term contract and long-term contract and parity between the different numbers, perhaps, of where you are in terms of what your years are. Does that make sense? Number of years of your contract, and how much security you get from that. And then I think we felt that it was good to be separated from career services, but and keep emphasis on the academic role, but we do collaborate or rely on career services for different aspects of student support and student advising.
Yeah, I joined this discussion. We were in agreement as far as what types of tasks we would expect from career planning and what types of tasks we think, responsibilities we think are those of the faculty director of the program.
Maybe you have to comment on
I would just say, it just occurs to me as this is not a new thought, but it's continually reinforced that that my faculty status, I think it's the protected faculty status, what it really enables me to do is fend off. And I don't like how that feels, but I continually, because I think many of us have a situation where most of the time there's not anybody paying attention, and that's okay when it's not necessarily when everything else is going all right, and we have the autonomy that comes with that. And I don't know that that's different, really, with this aisle in the middle. I don't think that's different, but when somebody does come calling, if it's, a situation with my curriculum committee last year where actually another clinician decided to, felt threatened by externships, decided to, make a statement.
Sorry.
And
Wrong time.
I was able to, I think, very comfortably say, you want to bring everybody else's course before the curriculum committee do it. Otherwise, it's an issue of academic freedom, and buzz off. And then I didn't hear anything more about it. And I know that that's not, so I think the faculty piece, and there are, I don't think that it's whatever the opposite of one size fits all, right? Because you can have faculty status and not have the ability to do that, right? I mean, and so I don't know that there's a difference between faculty and staff when it comes to that kind of protection. It just seems to me the way I've always thought about it is if the faculty status gets you in the room to have, I mean, to me, the idea of being at a conversation with the faculty where you are the only person doing externships or you're leading it and you can't say anything, it's shocking. I mean, it's just completely not rational.
Or you're not invited.
Right. I mean, it's just not rational. And so that, I've always thought of the faculty designation as at least a pathway in. And not that we should have to do that, but I guess that's why I think about it. It has nothing to do really with any sort of prejudice against a staff position, where it's just that, you know.
And coming from the business world, I'm actually shocked that there aren't more people in the meetings.
Right. Oh. Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah. I know, and there's people, you know, it's funny you say that, because there's faculty who are like, oh, you have to go to a meeting. I'm like, I would kill to
right,
go to that
exactly.
meeting. Like, yeah.
So, as you can imagine, that was my reminder. We were at 5 minutes. I already went off. I thought I would catch it before I did that. One of the things I love best about this community is how sharing we all are. We learn from each other constantly. So I shamelessly stole this exercise from another
From a concurrent experience.
that I loved. That's very externship-y, I think, in approach. And so there's little note cards, and we're hoping to have more time so that, again, there could be actual takeaways we all hear from each other on. So hopefully we'll have a minute or two just to get a few. But if you could take out the note card, and so circle, square, triangle. Something that's circling in your brain now, in your mind, based on this conversation we started, both in small groups and then brought back together. Something that squares with what you came in the room thinking and knowing about this discussion, things we talked about in this discussion. And delta, something you would like to maybe change, either with respect to your role, your school, as a result of this conversation. So circle, square, delta.
Do you have another card?
Okay, you can.
No, when you say square, can you affirm?
Yes. It lines up and squared with what you already got and knew.
And circle is,
Something new, basically, that's kind of floating around for you now, or that you're noodling on after us all talking about these things.
All right, just for the thorough review, I think the triangle is what?
Delta.
Triangle.
Change.
Yeah, don't be sorry.
Something you would think about changing or might like to change, either with respect to your role, at your school, even just something you might want to raise, something that you want us to see some action move forward from based on this conversation.
This is a tough one. A lot of information on this one.
And I hate that we're rushing it. We'll do 60 seconds and then people are going to share out. So then I want you to get to the reception and have cocktails. Snacks.
So, anybody want to share something that's circling in their brain?
I'll share. Sorry.
Lauren?
So circling in my brain, we kind of talked about this too, but at least from the administrative perspective, this lean in movement that we clearly need to get behind. You get a seat at the table, at the faculty tables. We're all familiar with lean in, and we need to use it in the same context, which is currently.
Great. Anyone else?
I'm kind of an outsider, but it's interesting to observe the constraints that prevent kind of the growth and evolution of this process. It seems like it's all moving in the same direction, but there are things. Money is always a thing. Time is always something like that. But it seems like there's some other ones where it's just reallocation of effort and role that might be there as well. So.
New thing that I'm thinking about is, I feel like I had a lot of autonomy in what I'm doing, but now I'm starting to question whether I've been holding back the potential that I could be changing and improving because of what if I run up against the wall and I can do nothing about it? Or it rubs someone the wrong way, and I work in a natural state, and I know what to do.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm circling about is just what is the need in the school for these positions? There are more and more of them. There's clearly a need for this now that everything's expanding. And it's becoming such a huge part of the curriculum. So then where are the power points? Where's the practical power of negotiating these positions? And there have to be some. And there are not many people in this academy to fill all of the necessary externship, director, control positions. So isn't there power? And where is it? What do you think it is?
I think power's in the numbers. To me,
Right.
we all serve, if you surveyed all of us, I'd love to see the number of students, percentage-wise, students we serve in every class, how many credits we cover. I mean, to me, I want that data, like that specific data, because I think that tells a story in a different way and gives leverage points.
It's so cool to collaborate, to come up with a really good rubric for the kind of data we need to collect to do that.
Well, and then in the plenary this morning, somebody mentioned tracking the time,
Oh, yeah.
tracking the time you spend with students,
Right.
one-on-one discussion. I mean, I can't comprehend what that number probably looks like.
Yeah. Or answering their emails.
Well, that's the, I mean, I guess that gets back to
Think about billing time.
Last few weeks,
That's the key. Don't know what
Right.
we do.
But then, there's your advocacy. But then the exposure, then you
Right.
realize, then
There's
like, wait a second.
Absolutely, there's risk. Yeah, there's risk.
So let's move on to the square.
Oh, I don't know. Anything that's further confirmed for you now, like you kind of thought that was how this worked, or
And you
that
received
is how it works?
confirmation.
The faculty status is kind of the best practice in this role. Having faculty status.
Anybody else have anything confirmed? You all need an admin?
But it's adaptive, I think. Undefined and adaptive.
Yeah, also heavily regulated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Heavily regulated?
And that heavy regulation, I think, is why every school has an externship director now.
Well, not every school.
Well,
Not
true,
every school.
true. Before,
That was an aim when we were thinking about the regulations, though, is
Yeah.
to kind of let the tail wag the dog on that kind of thing.
yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Any more squares, or can we do deltas?
Things we'd like to
Mark,
change.
did you have another square?
No, Delta.
Yes, sir.
I've been an in-house clinician, an externship clinician, director, externship program. I've been an associate dean. I swear, we keep reinventing the same wheel. And the only thing that changes is who's the target. You know, we've gone from in-house clinicians, then it was legal skills, now it's externships, and it's like, where does the fight stop? When do people finally realize that this should be all integrated into one sum?
So that's what you'd like to change. Integration. What you'd like to see. Anyone else?
Don't be afraid of change.
Yeah. Don't be afraid of trying to change things yourself.
And using this community to talk about, like, there are lots of these folks who have faculty status took steps, and it certainly in a lot of cases, especially from the beginning, there was some fights sometimes and some advocacy that had to happen. So if that one is this idea of going to one curriculum, or the need for faculty status really being a best practice is something that's going to be important for you and your, where you sit in our institution going forward. Talk to this community, talk to folks who have it, to get advice, get counsel, get allies. I say it all the time. I'm super blessed, 'cause although I don't have faculty status, the people in the room who do and who are a big deal. Like Jane Aikens, our vice dean, and her expertise and knowledge and commitment and passion for experiential education is undeniable and very well established. But what if she wasn't there?
Well, and
What do
also,
you do?
you also don't, you know, at a lot of schools, the tension is with other clinicians.
Yes.
So, you know, it's, but I do want to affirm the point you made about finding an ally. And I think if you can, to find an ally who is in the room or who can really, is going to give you honest and real feedback and hopefully be an advocate for you. And I know that too is risky. I mean, it's you know, even identifying that person and initiating a relationship, but it can really help. And I think we all do it in different ways. I mean, you know.
So I know you guys have already stayed late with us, but that's something that can't be denied, what you're just saying about Danny, that perception in 2018 still, that our work around externships is going to cannibalize our clinical program is a tension that is still, so right to Mark's first, you know, change delta point. So this is a continuing conversation. There's no question about it. Do you have any final thoughts?
Thank you all.
Thank